This afternoon, we're going to tell stories and words of Torah from three different great Hasidic Rebbes. One, Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhinsk. Two, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. And thirdly, the Tiferes Shlomo, Reb Shlomo HaKohen of Radomsk. Now you can look up the history of these people, when exactly they lived and what their particular, but right now I just want to focus on the stories. And these stories are all in one way or another relevant to Pesach. Let's begin with Rebbe Elimelech, about whom we're not going to really tell a story, but we are going to introduce it with the tefillah of the end of the tefillah of the prayer of Rebbe Elimelech of Lezhinsk, which has been popularized in a nigun by Avram Fried, I believe, and others. And at the end of his prayer, before the prayer, Rebbe Elimelech says, this is the way we have to relate to looking at other people. And very simply, it's to see the good in them. And quite the opposite from finding fault, and this person isn't exactly that way, and he should be this way, and this is what he did to me. It's always easy to find fault. And in finding fault with the other, we're trying to find goodness, but I would never do that. And we are not good by virtue of being better than the other person. We're good by virtue of being good. And one of the things about being good is to find the good in the other. Adarabba, just the opposite from the way we often live in life. Tein b'libeinu, give it to us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put in our hearts, shenireh kol echad malat chavereinu, that everyone should be zocha, should merit to see the goodness, the value in the others. V'lo chesronam, and not what they're lacking and the way they fail. And whenever we speak to others, we should speak to them b'derech harashu hayashar v'haratzui. That's what Rebbe Elimelech taught. And sometimes, perhaps, it's not so easy to find the good in the others, but look hard. There is one thing, we go prospecting for gold, go prospecting for good. And you'll find it, like Rabbi Nachman, we've introduced the fourth one, says that you can always find at least a little bit of good in another person. And that's where you have to start in a relationship. So we have the Tiferes Shlomo, Reb Shlomo HaKohen of Radomsk, who's commenting in his Sefer Tiferes Shlomo on the mission that Yaakov sent Yosef to find his brothers who were pasturing the sheep. And it's rather remarkable. Yaakov had to know that the brothers held it against him, and we know what the end of that story, or the middle end of that story, did not bode well for Yosef. And Yaakov says to him, Lech na re'eh yeshlom achecha v'yeshlom hatzon. Go see how they're doing. Go see the shalom of your brothers who are pasturing the sheep. And Reb Shlomo HaKohen says what it means is that Yaakov said to his son, it's easy to find what's wrong with a person, but go see the good in your brothers. At Shlom Achecha. Shalom, which is the good and peace, is the word shalem, the perfection. Sometimes you have to look a little bit harder, but begin to get that quality of self that you can see the good in the other. And indeed, we all know what happens, but Reb Shlomo HaKohen of Radomsk goes on and says, this is, and he gives a Hasidic pshat in a pasuk, Mi ha'eish ha'chafetz chaim. Who is the person who wants life? Who is the person who is ohev tamim, Oev Yomim, who loves living days, Lirot Tov, and right? And the answer is Nitzar L'shon Chameira. Guard your tongue from speaking evil. And Shlomo HaKohen reads the pasuk in the following way: Mi ha'ish hechafetz chayim. Right? Who is the person who wants life? Right? Ohev Yomim Lirot Tov. And who loves living these days? The answer is Lirot Tov, to see the good in the other, to always find the good in the other. And it is this idea expressed both in the tefillah of Rabbi Elimelech and in the Torah of Shlomo HaKohen that we're going to talk about today with a story about Pesach. Two stories. It was on Pesach, Erev Pesach, the eve of Pesach, in the morning, that Rabbi Levi Yitzchak called to some of his Hasidim and said, look, I want you to go and get me some chametz, find me some chametz. They said, Rebbe, it's Mamish Erev Pesach, it's soon time, there are no Jews don't have chametz left. They've already gotten rid of them, maybe a few crumbs that they're going to burn, but we're not going to be able to find chametz. Levi Yitzchak said, I want you to do it. And so the Hasidim watched them spreading out around Berditchev, running around, knocking on doors, stopping people in the street. You have chametz. They say, what are you, crazy? Have you lost your minds? It's Erev Pesach. What are we going to have chametz now? And they come back to the Rebbe, and they are in despair. The Rebbe wanted chametz. And they say, they're coming in from all sides, from all the districts of Berditchev, however big it was. Rebbe, we couldn't find chametz. Levi Yitzchak says, all right, what I want you to do, I want you to go out and I want you to find Turkish silk. Ooh, Turkish silk. That's very expensive silk. Silk garments, silk for making garments, very expensive. And it's hard to find because, it has to be smuggled over borders. But they all go running, and they go here, and they go there, and after a while, each one of them comes back with, okay, we have to pay this guy, and we have to pay that guy, and it was exorbitant, but we found it. And Rabbi Levi Yitzchak turns and says, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the Universe, right? Master of the Universe. Look at how wonderful the Jews are. You told them that they shouldn't have chametz. And even before that time, exactly, there's no chametz to be found, even though you can find chametz all over. They could go any place to the general marketplace and buy, and there's nobody to check and nobody to know whether you have chametz or don't have chametz hidden in your house. You can find chametz in Berditchev. But when you ask Jews to find chametz, you want to find chametz from Jews, they're not a Jew who has chametz. But here they have the Tsar. Here you have the king, the laws against smuggling, and there are guards at the border, and they're holding weapons, and heaven help the person who's found smuggling. And yet, the smugglers carry the chametz, and the carry the silk, and they smuggle across the borders, and they evade the guards. They take great danger upon themselves to bring the silk in. And the people who buy it are also at great risk. But not a problem finding it. Ribono Shel Olam, look at how wonderful your people are. There are no guards at the border, and there's nobody holding a gun, and there's no threat of prison, and yet you say, let there not be chametz, and there's no chametz. Gewalt. Shenira kol echad, b'malos chaveiro, in the wonderfulness of the Jews. And then we come to another story in Berditchev. And this story takes place not on Erev Pesach in the morning, but takes place after the Seder of Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. Okay? So the story is that he had made the Seder and he felt that he had really had every right kavanah, had every right intention, had done everything right, and yet he has a feeling that min hashamayim, from heaven, they're saying, Levi Yitzchak, don't feel that you've made the greatest Seder in all of Berditchev. There's a Jew someplace in Berditchev whose Seder is greater, more beautiful than you. Levi Yitzchak is startled. Who is this Jew? And in the meantime, all the Hasidim are gathering by Rabbi Levi Yitzchak to talk with him. They've already finished their Seder. They want to see the Seder of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. They want to hear the Torah he has to say, even though his Seder may be over, but you can talk Torah. The Torah of Yetziat Mitzrayim, we know in Bnei Brak, they spoke until the Talmidim came and said, it's time to say Kriyat Shema. And he says to them, instead of telling Torah, he says to them right away, oh, do you know this Jew? His name is, and it's a name that he had heard, Min HaShamayim, Chaim Treger. Now, Treger means a person who carries things around. He's a Wasserträger. He's the man who took water and delivered water to today. You have bottles of water, you have a sink, you open it before you have to go to a well. But if you don't want to go to a well, or you don't want to go to the river, so there were people, water carriers. And let me tell you, carrying water is you're carrying something very heavy. So Chaim Treger, his Seder was some Seder that's incredible. So I want you to find Chaim Treger and bring him here. I have to talk to this person. I never heard of him before. I have to know he's probably some kind of hidden tzaddik, the ultimate tzaddik, one of the Lamed Vav, one of the 36 just men, right? Okay? So Hasidim go, where are we going to find Chaim Treger? Finally, somebody says he lives in this hovel someplace, okay? They knock on the door, and his wife answers, and they say, we want to see your husband. He says, what do you need him for? He's drunk in his bed. He's like lying drunk, right? The Hasidim don't care what she said. Reb Levi Yitzchak said, I want to see Chaim Treger. Bring him here. So they go to the bed. They wake him up. He can't walk. They're stumbling around. So they pick him up, and there you see in Berditchev. Let's fly in the sky of Berditchev and watch the Hasidim that Pesach night, right? Pesach night. Right, you're running around Berditchev looking for him, then they find him, and there's a crowd, and they have to pick him up, and they're carrying Chaim Treger. He's a person who carries water all day long. Now they're carrying him to bring him to Reb Levi Yitzchak, and they bring him to Reb Levi Yitzchak, and Reb Yitzchak says, "Sit down, Chaim Taira, Chabibi." Reb Levi Yitzchak says to him, like this. He says, did you say Avodim Hayinu on Erev Shabbos, on Shabbos before? He says, yes, I said Avodim Hayinu on Shabbos Hagadol. Right. Did you check for chametz? He's looking for, maybe he did it in such a way that nobody had ever done it before, right? He said, yeah. Did you do the Seder tonight? At which point, Reb Chaim says, Rebbe, I'm going to tell you the truth. I heard early this morning that you can't drink whiskey. You can't drink all the really intoxicating beverages. It's chametz. I can't drink, and I had a lot in my house. So early in the morning, I can't drink whiskey for 8 days and chutz la'aretz, right? I can't drink whiskey. How can I live without it, right? And I had all this whiskey. So I drank enough whiskey that'll last me for 8 days. Right? And I fell asleep. I got drunk and I fell asleep in this drunken stupor. When it came nighttime, my wife begins to shake me and wake me up, and she says, "Why aren't you doing the Seder? Like all the Yid and all the Jews are doing the Seder." And I say, "What do you want from me? I'm an Amaretz, I'm an ignoramus." Right? My father was an ignoramus. What do I know? I don't know anything. The only thing I know was that we were once Avadim, we were once slaves, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out and gave us freedom, right? And now we're also in Golus, we're also like in Mitzrayim, we're also slaves, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us out of this Golus. Gewalt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take us out of this Golus, right? Then I was already a little bit awake, I saw on the table, there are matzos, and an egg, and wine. So I sat down, and I ate the matzahs, and I ate the egg, and I drank the wine, and then I was so tired, and the wine also, I fell asleep. Right? When Reb Levi Yitzchak heard this story, right, he said, "Carry him back to his house again." And after he had been returned to his house, and the Hasidim gather again with Reb Levi Yitzchak, he says, this what happened. And what he said were very, very appreciated in heaven, because he said them in truth. And now we're also in Golus. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God, once took us out of Golus, and he's going to take us out of this Golus. His kavanah was absolute. He said that which he truly believed and truly yearned and hoped for. And that's all that's necessary. That's all that's necessary. A word of truth. A word that Levi Yitzchak is also teaching the Hasidim. Shenire kol echad malas chaveiro v'lo chesrono. This drunk who really doesn't make a Seder and everything, he's a mamash tzaddik. In Shamayim, they're dancing to his Seder. When he sings, that's enough. I've done enough for the Seder. Like we sing, Dayenu, and he says, Dayenu for the Seder. I said what I said, I'm going back to sleep. And they say, what a Dayenu this Yid, Chaim, the Wasserträger, has sung. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the wisdom to see the good and understand that there is going to be a Geula. And even, I should say, the wisdom to see that Baruch Hashem, in our generation, in your generation, in my generation, we've seen the first steps of the Geula. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is asking us to see the good in others, and when that comes, right, we'll be Am Echad Ba'aretz, a people unified as a people. Then hopefully we'll see at the end Eliyahu Hanavi, not coming to drink the cup, but coming to raise the cup. Koso shel Eliyahu, Koso shel Mashiach. Wonderful. Seems that it's hard to turn it off.